Once again, the WNBA media is telling you a story, but not the story. And of course, it's all to make you think the league is setting records without Caitlin Clark. They reported that the finals were the most watched in 25 years. But you won't believe what they're not telling you up front. Because once you see what's really going on, you can't unsee the narrative. It's a pattern we've watched all season. And once you see the receipts I've got, it's undeniable what they're trying to push and hide. Let's get into the ridiculousness. But first, hit like if you're tired of the media trying to bury Caitlin Clark's impact. And just because I'm curious, drop a Y or N in the comments if you watched even 1 minute of the finals. You'll see my comment there too. Okay, let's start here. The media have been cherry-picking viewership data all season long to make the league look healthy and strong without Caitlin Clark. And after you see this, I dare you to disagree that there's an agenda. Let's start with March Madness. As we all know, Caitlin and the Hawkeyes made it to the finals in both 2023 and 2024. And in both of those years, viewership was off the charts, but especially in 2024, when the Iowa-South Carolina Championship drew 18.9 million viewers. Keep this in mind as we go. In 2025, everyone expected viewership to drop without Caitlin Clark, but ESPN didn't feel like reporting that. In the second round, the Sweet 16, and the Elite 8 this year, ESPN compared viewership numbers to 2023 instead of 2024. And when it got to the Final Four and the National Championship, ESPN suddenly stopped comparing to 2023 as well. And it's obvious why. If they had the guts to compare honestly against 2024, which we all agree, as the previous season is the most logical comparison, they would have had to admit that viewership fell by over 10 million. Comparing to 2023? Don't tell me that wasn't deliberate. And it happened again with the 2025 WNBA draft. ESPN claimed in big bold numbers that draft viewership was up 119%. But again, when you look at the fine print, they once again compared to 2023 and not 2024. Because if they compared to 2024, the year Caitlin Clark was drafted, they'd have to admit the ugly truth. Viewership didn't go up. It actually dropped 49%. Half the audience gone. But wait, there's more. Right after the 2025 WNBA All-Star Game, ESPN did it again. They posted on social media that the game's average viewership hit 2.2 million, up a jaw-dropping 158%. But again, in the fine print, they admitted they were comparing to 2023. Because if they did the normal thing and compared to the previous year, 2024, they'd have to admit the inconvenient truth. The 2024 All-Star Game with Caitlin Clark pulled in 3.4 million viewers, which means in 2025, viewership dropped 36%. That's over 1.2 million fewer viewers. And I think that 36% drop is actually conservative. If Caitlin Clark had been playing on her home court, those numbers would have exploded past 3.4 million, likely past 4 million. And I would bet that if Caitlin Clark hadn't been on the sidelines coaching, viewership would have dropped more. People will literally watch just to see her, even if it's on the bench. So, we now have 3 clear-cut instances within the same season where networks conveniently skipped the 2024 comparison because it would have fully exposed the Caitlin Clark effect. I don't see any other way to explain it. Give this video a like if you agree. Now, surely the media wouldn't repeat the same trick with the WNBA Finals and compare the ratings to 2023, right? Caitlin Clark wasn't in the finals last year, so what would be the point? But I had a sneaking suspicion they might try something questionable. And here is why. In 2024, Caitlin Clark and the Indiana Fever drew 2.5 million viewers for Game 2 of their first-round series against the Connecticut Sun. That game is still the most-watched WNBA playoff game ever on ESPN. The closest to it was last year's Game 5 between the Liberty and the Lynx, which averaged 2.15 million viewers. Going into this year's playoffs without Caitlin playing, there was no reason to believe any game would get 2.5 million viewers. Now, the Fever, had they made the finals, might have done it. Without Caitlin Clark, they managed an average of 1.56 million viewers in their 5-game series against the Aces. But with the Fever not making the finals, and knowing that they outdraw every other team, you had to think there was no chance that a finals matchup between the Aces and Mercury would get anywhere near 2.5 million viewers. Heck, I doubted they would beat the 1.56 million average the Fever drew in the semis. And let's face it, that would be a WNBA PR nightmare. The 2025 finals ratings dropping series over series and year over year would be a horrible look for a league that's supposedly experiencing unprecedented growth. And the warning signs were there before the finals started. The get-in price for Game 1 was only $35. courtside seats were available for just a few $100s. For comparison, when I looked at Fever tickets in New York earlier this year, the get-in price at Barclays Center was $112 for the nosebleeds. Courtside seats were in the thousands. $35 for a finals ticket sent a very clear message. It suggested there was little demand and set the stage for what could have been embarrassing ratings for the league. But then the numbers came in and everyone was shocked.
1.9 million viewers with a peak of 2.5 million. ESPN scores most watched Game 1 of the WNBA Finals in 28 years.
Game 1 drew 1.9 million viewers, which was much higher than Game 1 last year, which brought in 1.1 million. From a surface-level comparison, that looked like significant growth. It is still below Caitlin Clark's 2.5 million playoff game against the Sun, but if we are comparing finals to finals and Game 1 to Game 1, it seems like an impressive jump. However, that headline did not tell the full story. The coverage focused on the percentage increase, but ignored a crucial piece of information about how the ratings were actually measured.
Nielsen methodology change. A key factor in 2025 is a change in Nielsen's methodology to include big data plus panel, which incorporates out-of-home viewing. A change that generally results in higher reported viewership for all sports broadcasts compared to previous years.
That is a huge piece of missing information. Nielsen changed the way it measures television ratings on September 2nd, and that change directly affects how the WNBA Finals were counted. Before the update, Nielsen's national panel relied on data from about 42,000 households. Now, it includes information from 75 million devices. In other words, the sample size multiplied many times over, and Nielsen itself acknowledged that this would make future ratings appear higher than in previous years. Because of that shift, it is impossible to make an honest comparison between this year's playoff numbers and last year's. The methodology is completely different. This season is essentially year one of a brand new data set. That means the 1.9 million figure that the media keeps celebrating cannot be used to gauge actual growth. It is not an apples-to-apples comparison. The number may be technically accurate, but it is missing the context that explains why it looks so inflated. Unfortunately, we live in a soundbite and snapshot world, and most people never read past the headline. They see 1.9 million viewers and a big percentage increase and assume the league is booming. But once you understand how the data really changed, what happened after Game 1 becomes even more revealing.
In the first time using the best-of-7 format, the WNBA Finals have averaged 1.9 million viewers, a peak of 2.5, 1.2, a peak of 1.4. The Fever annihilate that in regular season games all the time. 1.3 million viewers, a peak of 1.6. They annihilate that on a regular basis.
Even with the new methodology that pumps up the numbers, viewership for the finals dropped sharply after Game 1. Games 2 and 3 fell as low as 1.2 million viewers. That is a significant decline, and it happened despite the fact that this new system counts far more devices than before. As Rhodes Rants pointed out, Fever games during the regular season easily outperformed those numbers under the old measurement system. When Caitlin Clark was in the lineup, Indiana was pulling in more than 2 million viewers. Even their preseason exhibition against Brazil drew 1.3 million viewers. Think about that. A Caitlin Clark preseason game attracted more viewers than a WNBA Finals game when using a less flattering rating system. That comparison says everything about who actually drives interest in the league. This brings us to the next part of the problem. Remember how, during March Madness, the media stopped comparing data to previous years once the numbers dropped? They did the exact same thing here. For Game 1, the comparisons to last year were everywhere. Every headline shouted that the finals were up double digits from 2024, but once Games 2 and 3 came in, that language disappeared. Suddenly, no one was talking about year-over-year growth anymore. And that is because when you compare Game 2's 1.2 million viewers to 2024 using the same standard, the numbers fall below last year's finals entirely.
Oh snap. Last year, Game 2 did 1.34 million. Viewership peaked with 1.82 million.
Even with the inflated viewership metrics, The numbers for this year's Game 2 were lower than Game 2 last year. If the old measurement system were still in place, the drop would be even more dramatic. We're talking potentially under 1 million viewers. In reality, viewership was likely far worse than what the public was told. Despite that, Front Office Sports ran a headline claiming that the 2025 WNBA Finals were the most watched in 25 years. It sounded like a massive success story, but what they failed to highlight, at least not until deep in the article, was the reason behind those inflated totals.
Audience metrics are getting a bump this year from Nielsen. Let me repeat that. Audience metrics are getting a bump this year from Nielsen, which recently changed its tracking methods to include set-top boxes and smart TVs. So we're going to run, how many, what is this? What is it? 1, 2, 3, 4. You got to go way down here to the 5th paragraph to get to a crucial piece of information that is literally 1 sentence long.
Look, I do not need to go full tinfoil hat mode on this one. When you bury the lead that far down, you're hoping people just read the headline and take it at face value. That headline is the message they want you to believe, that the WNBA is better than ever. It is the same pattern we have seen in every example I mentioned. Key information is buried, comparisons are selectively chosen, and inconvenient data is quietly ignored. I am sure that as the league rolls out more end-of-season reports, we will see more headlines celebrating 2025 as a record year for viewership and attendance. But let's not forget the details behind those numbers. The Fever, the team that gets way more viewers than everyone else, had a record 41 nationally televised games. Teams upgraded arenas to ones 2 to 4 times the size just to host the Fever. And there was an expansion team added, which automatically increases league attendance totals. I understand why the WNBA wants to present itself as a growing league. Team values have more than doubled since Caitlin Clark entered the league, and they cannot make it look like she is the only reason behind it. But we all know what is going to happen next. When Caitlin returns and her games start drawing 3 or 4 million viewers under the new Nielsen system, the league will call it WNBA growth instead of giving her the credit. After following this league closely for 2 seasons and spending 20 years working in marketing and PR myself, it has become predictable, almost funny how they spin things. And it is not going to stop anytime soon. That is just the burden of being a Caitlin Clark fan in today's WNBA. Drop a W in the comments because you are a winner for watching the whole video. Thanks for sticking around, and I will see you next time.